Our guest today has 14 years in education and the last 7 years at Grapevine Faith High School, serving as the men's head basketball coach. He's an author, he's a point guard college director, former professional basketball player overseas, holds the record for the most games played at Baylor University at 118, led his Grapevine Faith team to the state semifinals this season, and from what I can tell, he's pretty much a social media guru, based on his Twitter page and things. But I'm so happy, very excited, and quite appreciative to have Coach Matt Sayman with me today. So welcome, Coach.
Thanks, Coach. I appreciate you having me on.
So this program is built around the concept of success never rest. That's something I've tried to live by for probably the last 25 years, and maybe somehow without defining it, the majority of my life. And to me, what it means is on your worst day, be good, on your best day, be great, and then on every other day, get better. And I just believe if you're doing those things, success is going to find you. You're not going to have to search it out. So knowing your past, doing my research, I know your life motto is stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Yeah. And I saw a direct tie between that when I read that. So with that said, I'm ready to get into this. So, the first thing I want to talk to you, Matt, thanks again for coming. We were talking earlier. I watched you play probably your senior year. I had just moved to Texas from Oklahoma. I was looking to coach basketball, and some of my friends said, we need to go watch The Colony, Tommy Thomas, and this kid. It might have been this white kid. Yeah. But anyway, that was probably one of my first introductions to Texas high school basketball, which we all know athletics in Texas is bigger than any other state, probably. Definitely Oklahoma. Basketball is big, but Texas, it was still another level. Yeah. So I believe several years ago I read, Matt, I couldn't find the article. I told you this earlier to verify it. But I read that you're not originally a Texas kid, but sometime, it seems 7th, 8th grade, junior high sometime, you felt the need that you need to either move to Texas or to a larger, I guess, situation to ultimately push you to the college basketball, which I assume we'll get into, and that's what you wanted to do. And then it also seems like your parents kind of picked up the family and moved to Texas. So you could realize your dreams. So I wanted you to, I just wanted you to tell me exactly and tell us how that story goes.
My family, we're all from Pennsylvania. Both my parents, they actually lived on separate hills with a valley in between them in Pennsylvania. All of our relatives are there. And so I grew up there. And when I was 14, actually, about 4th grade, I had a skills coach, Coach John, that really helped me with setting goals. And I set 3 goals. So this was in 4th grade, about 9 or 10 years old. Set 3 goals. One was to make my freshman A team. One was to make varsity as a sophomore. And then the third was to play college basketball. And so as a young kid, I set those goals, and I actually it was a little bit weird, but I was very driven at a young age. I do attribute that to my mom. My mom was in the military for a little bit of time and read me mental toughness books in junior high and helped push me to work every day, and kind of like your motto. And I did play growing up. I was a multi-sport athlete in elementary school and junior high. Basically, whatever season it was, I played during that sport. But basketball, I was always playing basketball year round. 7th and 8th grade came, and I started to drop off some of those sports, but I still swam and still played a little baseball. But then in my 8th grade year, a mentor of mine Really, my first coach ever, his name was Steve Yoder. He had moved from Berwick, where we were from, down to the colony to teach, and his parents lived down here. I came my eighth grade summer going into ninth grade. I came down to Texas to go to a basketball camp that he was working, and that was the first time I met Tommy Thomas. And as eighth grade, I was 5'4", 5'5", a goofy kid with size 13 shoes. So it wasn't like this future D1 recruit coming down to a camp. I was nobody. But when I met Coach T, he looked me in the eyes and he asked me, well, what do you want to do? What are your goals with basketball? And I told him my 3 goals that I'd had since 4th grade. And he said, Matt, those things can happen for you here. And I had a great experience at that camp, and I flew back home to Pennsylvania. On the ride from the airport back to Berwick, about a 2-hour ride, in the back of our van, I said, Mom, Dad, I need to move to Texas so that I can achieve my goal of playing college basketball. It was just a perfect timing. My dad was self-employed, so he could kind of do his business from anywhere. It really came down to my younger sister's approval. If she would have said, no, I want to stay here, that's what we would have done. But luckily she told our parents in about a minute or two, yeah, let's do that. And so to me, it's a pretty cool example of, for kids out there, if you have a dream, if you have a goal and you're serious about it, like it's not something that you just pick up and put down, or what's new today that I can be all about. If you're serious about it, your parents will literally do anything for you to achieve that goal. My parents moved our family across the country to a place we've never been before, where we have no family. And I moved down about 2 weeks before my freshman year and started at the colony. And then my family followed about a month later. And yes, you're right. The town I came from was a little 3A town in Berwick where football was king. And it's kind of funny. I moved to Texas where football is still king, but I kind of realized at the city where I was that even the best players from there just wasn't opportunity for them. And my goals were pretty big. And so we had to make that tough choice. And that's too, I didn't know if you wanted to get into any type of like playing other sports or whatnot, but I'm all about that multi-sport athlete all the way up through junior high. But then depending on what your goals are, you might need to start specializing, which is what I did as a freshman. I was all about that one thing to try to be great at it.
Okay. No, my philosophy would be the same. I encourage kids to play everything and do everything they can, and then make a decision late in your junior high or maybe even your freshman year of what direction you want to go. So, want to circle back on that to your mom a little bit. Obviously, had a big influence on you. You said, she started reading motivational type things to you when you're in junior high mindset. Can you point to anything? I mean, you said you made these goals when you were in 4th grade. 4th grade, I was shooting underhanded, trying to hit it off the backboard. That was my first goal.
Yeah.
Um, I definitely wasn't thinking about making my freshman team, any of those things. So tell me what happened in Matt Sayman's life before he was 9 and 10 years old that gave you even to think about having a mindset to make your ninth grade team. Was your parents great athletes or anything like that?
No, my dad was a double chemistry major, was played in the band. My mom was a cheerleader. Neither of them played basketball. And it was really cool. They allowed me to play everything, starting out, from soccer to little league, to play football. I swam. But with basketball, one, there was an instant connection. Like I wasn't, even when I first started playing, before I had done any skill work, I seemed to have a magnet for the ball. If it was loose, and my mom would say I was on the floor more than I was on my feet, which in college ended up being the case as well. But I just had a knack for it. And then when skill work was introduced, one, I think a big thing that players are missing out today is individual skill work is huge. Going to skill coaches is huge, but doing individual skill work on your own, Pistol Pete was my mentor actually, without ever meeting him, obviously, so his homework basketball videos. So in Pennsylvania we have a thing called winter, and so it gets really cold. But I'd watch my VHS tape, I'd pause the drill, and then I'd go to my garage and I'd perfect it or do it until I felt like I got it, and then I'd go to the next one and run inside the house. And but learning to love the process of working on different drills by yourself. Like my parents would drop me off at the YMCA in Berwick, and I'd stay there all day. I'd go to the outdoor courts and I'd stay there. And it wasn't I have to get this amount of time in and then I can finally stop. There just was a natural love for it. And you're right though. I mean, that instantly made me different than my friends. I mean, my friends were going and doing everything that was cool or in or what season it was. And I mean, I can remember going to a dance, which I could never dance, and I was wearing like some silk shirt and everything. But going to a dance at our middle school, walking by the gym, the lights were on, jiggle the door, it's open. There's a ball laying in there, and I spent the rest of the dance in there. I came out. My mom was like, "How'd it go?" I was like, "I just shot. I worked on my game the whole time." So, and then my dad's greatest. Well, the one thing I'm most thankful for was that he was always present. He didn't miss one college game, like you mentioned, 118. He was at them all, no matter where they were. So he was always there. And then my mom was more of the driving force. She had this set of stats that she felt I needed to achieve. I'm not sure where she got them from, but it was like, you need to score at least 10 points. This is like in 7th and 8th grade. You need to score at least 10 points, two threes, and then a certain amount of assists. And if I didn't do that, I needed to go practice instead of coming home, instead of doing other things. So yeah, and the mental toughness training for sports it was a red book, and she would sit me down and read it. And so I learned, even through high school that continued. I learned to think differently, and I really think she kind of instilled that.
Um, kind of I think you saw success pretty much every day. When you woke up and went to bed, you were seeing success through your mom and dad. I've often tried to figure out why we have to teach kids how to win. Often, where I've coached in the suburbs, where I go play Highland Park, and those kids just roll out of bed knowing how to win. And I've always contributed to, they have two parents that they see successful on a regular basis a lot of times. I know that's not all of it, but I think that's just such a huge deal.
Yeah, it's the belief. Like I know what you're saying about Highland Park. They roll up in their double decker buses and they come out of they walk onto the court or onto the field, and it's like these dudes just believe they're going to win.
Yeah.
Like for us, it was never. I've seen too many players nowadays. They stress and they have anxiety about, are they actually going to get to play in college? Like there's this fear that it won't happen. I don't remember that fear. And I kind of get, if you're 6'8" and you can put your chin on the rim in 8th grade, there shouldn't be fear of playing in college, right? But 5'6", 5'7" dude like me, like who knows if it's going to happen? But for us, it was always here are my goals. And actually, I made my freshman A team. I played varsity as a sophomore, and then I hit that third one. But it was as long as I'm doing the work and putting in the time and really embracing that process, then it will happen. But it's kind of like I love The Voice, and and when I can almost predict uh, what's going to happen to that singer in the audition stage before it does. When before they go out there, before they sing, the chairs are turned away. They interview that singer, and they usually go into two categories. One category is, oh, I hope they turn. If they do, that'll validate that I'm supposed to be singing. That person hardly ever gets picked. The other person goes out and says, I can't wait to showcase what I have and what my gift. I can't wait to share it. It's going to be awesome. That mentality seems to turn people more. And that it always blows my mind how so much, and it doesn't stop. Like, I mean, I have to think that way now as a coach. Man, I hope that we can do this or that. No, I can't wait for our team to go out and put on a show and play the way that we're capable of. That mentality part's huge.
No, totally agree. Um, so I want to talk a little bit, what kind of, I know you're a high school coach, but I want you to tell the people that will eventually be watching this, and I ask everyone this, what kind of high school coach did you play for?
So Coach Thomas, Tommy Thomas, I could tell right from the when I met him. One, amazing personality, the kind of guy that I've never met somebody who doesn't like him. Like if they, I mean, some people might have been frustrated when they were competing with him because he's so competitive, but he just has this personality where you feel at ease when you're around him. He has a great sense of humor, but what what I really appreciated from when I met him at that camp was his love for the game. Because I had it, I have it, and he had it where it's just when he was in the gym with us, you could tell there's no other place he wanted to be. Um, Coach T was a lot more defensive minded. If there was ever one thing that he probably got frustrated with me on is that I was more offensive minded, and but he was a great defensive coach and very passionate about that. He could do a lot with a little, and you could see that with our earlier colony teams, like my sophomore and my junior year, we were competitive even when we didn't have a lot of talent. And then my senior year, we had Darren Williams, who turned out to be pretty good, Bracy Wright, who was also an NBA player, and two other D1 players. So our starting five was all Division One players. That's pretty easy to coach at that point. Another thing that Coach T taught me was to respect the game, and he kept harping on that term with us about like do things that respect the game. When you put in the time and you put in the work, you respect the game. Like don't think you can just roll out of bed having not worked on your craft and be successful at it. That's not respecting the game. The game respects hard work, and I really appreciated that in him. And I think he saw the hard work that I was putting in. He was always willing to open the gym and be up there with us. But yeah, that's Coach T.
We're going to talk. I've got one of his quotes here, I believe we'll talk about here in a little bit when we talk about communication. so, um, so, for those of you that don't know, Matt's the author of The Leftovers, Basketball, Betrayal, Baylor, and Beyond. It's available on Amazon if you want to go get it. We'll
Yep.
plug you there.
Thanks, man.
So, I'd like to talk a little bit about, your time at Baylor. Obviously, that was your goal. And then suddenly, I'll let you tell the story. But I can't imagine working so hard, moving from one state to another to get what I want and then have this happen. But I have to believe it's helped you help so many others. So, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so going into my senior year at the Colony, I was playing summer ball. Some Baylor coaches started to follow our games a little bit. They were actually at our first game. The first game I saw them, they were there to watch one of my teammates. And then I think it's a great example of you never know who's watching. And so I was able to kind of get their attention. And then I went to two visits. I visited SMU, did not have a great experience there, and then I went and visited Baylor. And Coach Bliss was in his just finished his first season there. Was really out trying to get his first class of recruits to come, or actually was going into his first season there. Um, and he sold me on Baylor. I loved everything about the campus when I got there. Loved what it stood for, and then I loved his vision for basketball and how he saw me in it. And so I basically on the van ride home with my mom from Waco to the Colony. I said that's where I want to go, and it was really a cool moment because yeah, my parents had sacrificed a lot for me to get to be here to do this. And I think sometimes as kids and even still today, you can forget everything that people have done to get you where you are. And so that was really not just my goal and dream. It turned into my parents as well. And so I went through my senior year at the Colony. We had an awesome team. And then I learned really the transition. Like a lot of people have that D1 bubble or goal. And I learned really quickly how different it is. I mean, I'm a 6'3" point guard in high school too. I'm smaller, slower, and less physical than everybody at the next level. But I got to play every game my freshman year, every game my sophomore and junior year. And with Coach Bliss, I learned a new role and identity as a defensive guy, a hustle guy, and basically the dude on the team that would give up his body at any moment. And because of that, I couldn't score like I hoped I could. I wasn't athletic enough, but I could guard these bigger, stronger players and really just whatever the team needed. That's what I was going to do. So going basically to fast forward to everything, going into my senior year, we had a future pro players with John Lucas and Lawrence Roberts come that were going to be juniors. We had great role players like me and my other teammates, seniors that were going to be solid. Like we were picked in the top four of the Big 12, which means you get to go to the NCAA tournament most likely, because 6 or 7 teams from the Big 12 would go. And I mean, it just seemed like everything from, fourth grade, right, was happening according to my plan. And that's an important piece, my plan. Um, and then I got a call on a Friday afternoon from one of my professors, just said, hey, you need to turn on the TV. And I saw this story kind of unfold in front of me. And the next 2 months, I learned that one of my teammates had shot and killed one of my other teammates. And the coaching staff, Coach Bliss, and all those guys that I played almost 100 games for, found out that they were doing a lot of things wrong right in front of me. And I didn't even know it. And within the span of 2 months, I lost 10 teammates. 10 teammates decided, or one couldn't be there, and another, with the tragedy, and then a bunch other decided not to come back. And going into my senior year now with 6 scholarship players, a brand new coaching staff, Coach Drew, who's 32 years old at that time, taking over. And we weren't even allowed to play in postseason play. Like they told us that before the season started. So it was basically a different picture than I'd ever dreamed. So that's kind of that's the first 3 years, and I'll kind of let you direct where you want it to go from there.
Yeah. So, how did this personal experience facing adversity and basically having those dreams crushed, like you said, that you'd worked for since fourth grade. You know, I know you didn't go directly into coaching, but you know, how's that? I guess I'll ask you, how's it helped you communicate with your seniors right now?
Yeah.
Compared
You
facing
know,
adversity.
I have been able to. So over the years, when things don't go like when things go perfect, like this last season for us at Faith, it was. I mean, we got to like tabs in private school. We got to finish our season. You know, so like we were. It actually we had no big injuries. Like it actually was a nice, peaceful season and had success, which those are rare. But most of the time, when things don't go exactly the way we want, uh, thankfully, I do get to uh, rely or go back on my own experience. Like when I talk with guys, I would love to say, like even right now, I'd love to say that when I got that phone call and when that summer when everything fell apart, that I handled it great. I was a light for our university, and I stayed strong. But that's not the case. Actually, I kind of abandoned 21 years of really good habits in the course of 2 months. I mean, I completely threw myself into that party scene where I was living and doing things that really I had never done before. And what I realized though, and I got to remember this even today, is that my foundation has to be in something bigger than just basketball. So like our players today, yeah, you're working your butt off your craft and you have these goals, but you have to be about more. There has to be more to you because if I was to rip basketball away, what would I have? I didn't have anything to stand on, no foundation, and that actually took me down like a. I did. Well, I mean, my senior year at Baylor ended up being the most successful season I'd ever had there. We were 8-21, but we did things that nobody thought we would do. 6 scholarship players, and we were competitive. We beat some teams. Coach Drew did a great job of bringing us together. But I created these really bad habits I played in Iceland for 1 year. My habits followed me there. Like I really learned that you can't outrun your problems. Like I tried to go across the ocean and they followed me there. First practice, one of my teammates, when I told him I played at Baylor, he looked at me and said, don't they kill people there? Right. So like they knew about it over there. And so 9 years though of these bad habits. And so when I talk to players and it really is about making sure that as important basketball is, as important schoolwork is, as important our jobs are, or these relate like sometimes with these young kids, it's the relationships that they have right now. Like this girl is the most important girl to me ever. I'm going to marry. Well, probably not, dude. But the most important thing is that your whole life isn't revolving around her or basketball. And so I get to communicate that, but it's also I got to remind myself that like as a coach that my whole life doesn't revolve around winning and losing. If it does, I'm going to fall back into bad habits. And so that is a way that summer has shaped me over the years.
Okay. You said something in there that I wanted to touch on again. We mentioned it a little bit yesterday. We were talking about culture on our panel yesterday, and you basically said 21 years of culture that was shattered in one phone call.
Yep.
And I think that's very valuable for coaches, business people, and just people life in general. You can have 21 years or 25 years or 1 year of culture, but it gets back to you have to fight for it every day, every minute, because it's so easy to shatter. Um, so do you ever draw back on your experience with your players with the, this too shall pass, and although that followed you, you said to Europe, um, obviously now people don't look at you, and when you say Baylor, that's not the first thing. So can you talk
No,
a bit about that?
no, well, yeah. But right now, when I say that I played at Baylor, people think that's a pretty cool thing. When it was like 2005 or six, if I said I played at Baylor, they looked at me a little strange. So things have changed in a good way, and for the whole university, I think one of the things we talk about, excuse me, at faith a lot is perspective. You're never as great as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think you are. And I think when you screw up, which we all do, you got to keep perspective. Because if you start thinking that because of a mistake you're really as bad as you think you are, it'll lead you. Like I allowed those first few mistakes that I made when I was frustrated with that take me down this path that I didn't recover for 9 years, from 9 years. But then, so you got to protect yourself. And like you said, though, it's a daily decision. Like right now, I have to decide daily how I'm going to live and who I'm going to be, how I'm going to treat my wife, how I'm gonna treat the body that I have. Like I have to. Some days I eat a bunch of cookies, and I didn't decide to treat my body that great that day, right? And but and then the other part of perspective though too is you're never as great as you think you are. So like the moment that your stuff doesn't, you think your stuff doesn't stink, you're in trouble. And so I really help my players just stay. I hope I help them just stay present and stay in the moment. And because I think if you do that, like I think looking back at that summer, what really crushed me is so much work had gone into getting to the top of that mountain. I felt like, and we were just about to be there, and then it all crumbled down. Well, I wasn't really staying present. I had so much hope in just that one thing, and I think you just gotta yeah, stay grounded a little bit more.
Yeah. So I know out of college you go play professionally overseas, and I wasn't sure how long that was, and you said 1 year. So when did you know that coaching was what you wanted to do, or was that a natural progression from earlier in your life, or something you fell into because of? So
Yeah.
go, can you go into that?
Coach Thomas, I think Coach Thomas saw. So I was a cerebral player. When you're not athletic, you have to be. And then I worked on my athleticism, but uh, so I always wanted to know the whys and understand more. So Coach Thomas would allow me after games. I had a habit of uh, after a game, I would either stay in my uniform or go change into practice gear, and I come back out and shoot, especially if I didn't play well. And one of the things is I wanted my coach to know that if I stunk it up, that I wasn't okay with that, and I was going to work my tail off. And I carried that actually into Baylor because I did play every game while I was there, but I didn't play. Sometimes I didn't play a lot, and so I wanted Coach Bliss to know because sometimes when players don't play, they choose the wrong path, which is, well, if I'm not going to play, then I'm not going to work hard, and I'm not going to do that. That doesn't help you. And so I would always show them, hey, you didn't play me. I'm either going to go work out in the weight room or I'm going to go shoot. And I wanted them to see it. So I did that in high school, but he would also let me come watch film with him and his assistant coaches, and I loved that time. And actually, that's funny. That started back in junior high when I lived in Berwick. I was the stat keeper for our varsity team. And so on the buses, I would sit right behind the bench and I got to hear everything that the coaches were saying. And then on the bus rides back home, I would sit right behind them and I would just be listening to how they talked about the game. And there's a few times where Coach Scala, who was the head coach back then, even asked me a couple questions. So as an eighth grader, I'm listening to the varsity coaches, so Coach Thomas saw that in me, And I think at one time he told me not to coach though, because there was a lot of stress and no money in it. And he was right about that. But jokingly, I think he always saw that that was a part of it. But I did play in Iceland for a year, and so one of our themes at Faith is living without regret. It's easier said than done. One of the things I do regret is uh, squandering the the skill, and we're really, because early on in your 20s your body can still do amazing things, and so I squandered that time. And so I played there, and I was actually playing really well, and and but my party habits were following me, and we had won a championship already there. I was known as the top point guard in Iceland, which is a small country, but still it's kind of cool. And I had some offers to go play in Europe, but I wanted to stay loyal to them. And but actually, after a big party, they asked me to leave, and so I didn't even finish a full season of pro basketball, and I was so frustrated. I got back home, and I did about 9 jobs in a year and a half. I didn't want anything to do with basketball, and then it used to be called IAD. I can't remember what it's called now in Carrollton, but that the director of basketball operations job came open there, and I got it. And they had me coaching an eighth grade, because the guy that owned it, his son was an eighth grader. So that we built a team around that him, and I was coaching that team. It was my first team to ever coach, and I remember loving creating practices, talking with them, trying to get them mentally where they needed to be. I just fell in love with it. And from there, I started to look at, okay, coaching is what I want to do. And luckily, Coach Thomas uh, talked to Jeff Clarkson at Naaman Forest and said, hey, you have a guy that's going to start working at your school. You should hire him as a coach too. And so I coached my first year as a volunteer while I was teaching at Naaman Forest under Clarkson. So Coach T kind of really helped me. It's kind of funny, all the way get me down here and all the way into coaching.